Thanks for watching The Thought Criminals, named after the resistance to the totalitarian thought police of George Orwell's 1984, which we now refer to as being woke. I'm your host, Rachel Alexander. I'm a weekly contributor to Townhall and other sites and the editor of Intellectual Conservative. And this is my mall, Ralph Benko, who worked in or with the Reagan, W. Bush, and Trump White Houses. He's a weekly columnist for Newsmax, co-author of the Capitalist Manifesto, and co-founder and executive chairman of the 185,000 member Capitalist League Facebook group. Today, we're going to talk about Doug Ducey in a dress, which is what the leading gubernatorial candidate, Kari Lake, here in Arizona, referred to her RINO Republican challenger, Karen Taylor Robson, recently. And I just attended a debate last night with Kari, but Robson got too scared and didn't show up or something. And then we're going to pivot to a couple of awesome articles Ralph has written looking at Ukraine from more of a spiritual aspect. So to begin, the reason Kari has called this Robson Doug Ducey in a dress is because she looks like she would be another version of Doug Ducey, kind of a RINO if she became governor. And we're beginning to see more and more evidence of it coming out. One of the main findings people just discovered is that this Robson, who's on the Board of Regents for ASU, voted against a pro-life bill. This is a key bill that finally passed the Arizona legislature, despite her opposing it and trying to get ASU to oppose it, that would stop abortions for genetic abnormalities. This is like Down syndrome. So here in Arizona, if you have a Down syndrome baby and you don't want it, you cannot abort it. Give it up for adoption. There's plenty of other options out there. But this kind of stuff is coming out against this Taylor Robson, and there's a bunch of horrible other things about her. She was one of the regents who filed a bar complaint against our good friend, Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich, because I believe, and Brnovich believes it too, this was retaliation against him because he sued ASU over some bogus stuff, which included giving tax breaks to luxury hotels, leasing land to them instead of actually making them buy it so they could avoid paying property taxes. This is a sneaky thing universities have been doing around the country. They're now becoming the largest real estate developers in states. And so he also sued him over giving illegal immigrants in-state tuition, so they would get lower tuition than like regular Americans from other states. And he sued him over increasing tuition at a dramatic amount, 300% over just a few years, which is insane when you consider that Arizona's constitution says public higher ed shall be as nearly free as possible. And so there are a few other things about this this woman. She's come out and said that, we should be ashamed of our history as Americans. And there are some things that didn't make it into my article, probably because they're getting to be going down the rabbit trails. But I've been in Arizona for a long time, and I've worked in Arizona politics for a long time. And this woman is the sister of a former Maricopa County supervisor named Andy Kanasik. And we can get into all the corruption that I believe he has been involved in. He's one of the original RINOs that has caused all kinds of problems on the county supervisor's board. But most recently, he called for Representative Paul Gosar, who is just been an outstanding leader here in Arizona. He called for him to resign and be prosecuted for sedition.
Okay, well, I'm not a Gosar fan, so I'll put, sort of throw me into the clink along with this guy.
Yeah, but would you prosecute Gosar? Would you prosecute him, Ralph?
No, I'm not. I'm not the prosecutor type, but this was not the candidate. This was the candidate's husband, right? So no guilt by association.
Well, it's the candidate's brother, but if you look at their policies, their father is just like them too. He has his own long, sordid history in Arizona politics.
Okay, but no guilt by association, Senator McCarthy. That was then. This is now. Okay.
I'm giving people background. I want people to know the whole story. I'm the type, I'm an investigative reporter. I dig to the bottom of stuff, and I think Americans, they need to know this kind of stuff. And you know what? If somebody brought up my family, I think it's fair game. Where I think there is a problem is when you bring up minor children. That's where I think there should be some kind of a line of privacy.
Okay, well, in any case, why don't you tell us some good things about the woman who showed up at the debate? What did she say when she was debating this empty chair? And who is your?
Thanks, Ralph. I almost skipped over the whole debate last night. So
tell our millions of viewers her name and her background, and her prospects of getting nominated, her prospects of winning. Is she pro-Trump or anti-Trump? Who is this mystery woman?
Okay, by the mystery woman, you're talking about the Karen Taylor Robson, the Doug Ducey address?
No. The one who called her, the candidate who actually showed up last night for the debate.
Okay. So Kari Lake.
We've heard enough about Doug Ducey address to last me a lifetime. Forgive me. Now I'm getting confused in my head with Madison Cawthorn. If we're talking about political cross.
And by the way, all the people attacking him, you know what? Yeah. The liberal says you're not ever allowed to say anything bad about transgenders. You literally get canceled and fired if you say anything about transgenders. So why are they attacking this guy? Okay, he's just doing what transgender people do. But that's a side issue. Don't get me started.
Wait, you're an investigative reporter. Are you revealing to us now that Madison Cawthorn is transgender? This is big news. You should be reserving this.
I don't know. I'm sure the left is going to do a comprehensive, investigation into whether he really is transgender or not. He doesn't get privacy on that issue. If he was on the left and he was transgender, they would just leave him alone and they would cancel anyone who attacked him. But because he's on the right and he's wearing women's clothing, they're just going to crucify him. So anyway, at this debate last night, which Karen Taylor Robson didn't have the guts to show up at, Kari Lake, Matt Salmon, who, as you all know, was a former congressman, and he ran for governor back in 2002. John Napolitano won back then. And this other candidate who's far lesser known, Steve Gaynor. Basically, Kari went into the debate as the Trump-endorsed candidate. Even before Trump endorsed her, she was polling higher than all of her Republican primary opponents combined. So she's basically sweeping the race. She's the America First candidate. She's just, I gotta say, in my lifetime, I've hardly seen anything remotely like this. I've never seen anybody this proactive, this energetic, and the one thing I really like about her is, people are always.
I'm sorry. Remember, not all of us are political, are Arizona political sophisticates like you. Her is Kari Lake. That's her name, right? Kari Lake is came yesterday and debated Matt Salmon and Steve. What was his name? Okay, and so talking about back to this Doug Ducey address didn't show up. Okay, so Kari Lake, tell us about her, since you seem to be genuinely excited and moved by her and her candidacy. You refer to her as she was the front runner even before Trump endorsed her. Now Trump has endorsed her. Because Trump is so popular in Arizona, although he lost, if I may just remind you about the presidential election.
I don't want to get banned, so let's not get into that.
But he is popular among Arizona Republicans. So this is a big political asset for her. Wasn't she a TV star?
She was a TV news anchor here for like 30 years. And she was very popular. She mentioned during the debate that she has 85% name recognition in Arizona. But here's what I like about her. And this is my legal background coming out. Brnovich always complains to me about how everybody always attacks him for not doing this legally or not doing this legally, and a lot of these people attacking him are state legislatures who, guess what? they could file lawsuits themselves. They don't need Brnovich to go sue this person, even though Brnovich sues so many people, including the Biden administration, so many times I can't even count, that Steve Bannon refers to him as a brawler. Okay, so people are finally actually realizing Brnovich actually is super proactive, despite the lies his opponents are saying about him. Well, Kari Lake actually doesn't just sit there and rail, oh, Brnovich needs to sue this and Brnovich needs to do this. She does it herself. She has filed lawsuits. She has filed multiple lawsuits against Katie Hobbs. She just, and this should be coming out, an article of mine now in a few days, she just filed another lawsuit against Katie Hobbs to try to stop this Democratic Secretary of State, who I believe is out of control, from using Dominion voting machines in the 2022 election. A lot of laws that the legislatures are passing this year are not going to go into effect in time for the 2022 election. And our RINO Governor Ducey will not call a special session to get emergency legislation passed that could go in effect in time. So Kari Lake is amazing and innovative at coming up with things to do. Like during the debate last night, Steve Gaynor kept repeating over and over again, that's not the governor's job. The governor can't do that. And he was just such a negative. And I thought it was so funny because right after he keeps saying that, Kari jumps in and announces their latest lawsuit. And these lawsuits do go somewhere. When you are, let's say, a gubernatorial candidate, and as long as you have standing, the judge says you have standing, you can bring these types of lawsuits. I mean, you're an attorney just like me, Ralph. You know, we know there are some of these angles you can take. So maybe the governor can't pass laws, but the governor can certainly propose laws, work with the legislature to draft them, obviously sign laws, and the governor can do executive orders. I've been writing about Ducey for the past year, and I see all kinds of executive orders that he issues, including some on, contentious issues, say regarding the border. So anyway, I hate to say it, but I believe Steve Gaynor was probably the big loser in the debate last night for that reason, even though I thought on other things he said, he sounded fairly solid, but I just disagree with him about the power of the governor. And I was pleasantly surprised to see Matt Salmon. A lot of the conservative base have deserted him and they've gone with Kari Lake due to his ties to ASU as lobbyists and working for the Chinese Confucius Institute. He actually came out swinging fairly well. He did say that Fauci should be arrested. And he did try to correct the record on his involvement with the Confucius Institute. He said once he realized it was a bad setup, he actually asked ASU to end the program, and ASU did. So I'll give him that, but I don't believe he has a chance. I think Kari Lake has definitely got this wrapped up. And yeah.
Okay, got it. Well, thank you. It's an interesting peek into Arizona politics. When is the primary? When is the general election? Must be what, November, early November, November 3rd, November 6th, or something like that. When is your primary? Because we have a whole lot of dominoes getting ready to fall, a whole lot of primaries that are going to be held over the next 6 weeks. When is Arizona's primary?
Ours is unfortunately late, and it absolutely drives me crazy because then we spend all this time beating each other up instead of the Democrats. Ours is not until, I believe, April 4th. It might be April 6th.
If it's April 6th, that's almost a year away.
I'm sorry, August 4th or August 6th.
August 4th or August 6th. Okay, that's a long primary season. So you're gonna have a lot to be reporting on between now and then. So
and Kari literally jumped into the race a year ago. So she's literally had to fight Republican opponents, and a couple of them there last night. Not Kari, but the other two said we're pretty much very similar. So it's just very frustrating seeing these three candidates that are so similar beat up on each other for a year in April, May, June, July, August, a year and 4 months.
Okay, so just one last question, and then let's pivot over to Ukraine, and that is, what is what will Kari Lake do for Arizona when and if she gets elected governor? What is her big promise? What is her primary economic or security or social agenda item? What is she campaigning on? Is she crusading for something? What hill is she willing to die on?
Well, she definitely has several issues that she is strongly championing, and they're going to be the usual suspects, from border security to election fraud to things like CRT in schools and the pandemic, addressing any future pandemics. I would say that's the big ones. And of those, I would say maybe the border is her biggest issue. I don't know, it could be election integrity, but with the border, I feel like maybe at this moment it's getting even, it's peaking right now with Biden rescinding the Title 42 COVID restrictions at the border in May. And so Kari has launched this huge border plan. She launched it about 2 months ago. I got an article about it, and it's just incredible. It's comprehensive. It's been endorsed by the Border Patrol Council president. I think it goes beyond anything even like Texas Governor Greg Abbott has proposed. It's basically an interstate compact with other states, and they don't even have to be border states. And a lot of it is going to be, they're going to send their National Guard to our border. And then there's other parts of it, which include, stopping the tunnels, arresting and deporting illegal immigrants instead of just, flying them around the country like the Biden administration does. And a lot of this can be done by declaring an invasion at the border. Brnovich has issued a legal opinion stating, yes, there is an invasion. And so Doug Ducey has to declare it. And Doug Ducey, surprise, surprise, has not even declared an emergency. And Kari Lake has offered him her border plan and said, look, I think you should implement this now. You don't need to wait till I win the office. And he just pretty much blew it off. He just announced a couple days ago this border plan that he made with like 21 other governors. And the essence of it is, let's fight fentanyl harder. That's it. Like, there's hardly anything about the border other than, let's send a few more people to the border to stop these fentanyl shipments.
Okay, thank you. The only thing I know about Doug Ducey, forgive me, but I only have a light contact with Arizona at this moment. I've lived there, and I used to be a more frequent visitor. But I think wasn't he the ice cream guy? Didn't he make his fortune with some kind of ice cream empire?
That's right. And it's funny, nobody talks about that anymore because he has such a long record, having served almost 2 terms now in office. And before that, he was the state treasurer.
Cold Stone, right? Wasn't he the Cold Stone guy?
Right on.
It's a pity he's term limited, because all he would need to do, it gets really hot there during the summer, as you well know. If he just promised free ice cream for everybody, then he'd be a shoo-in. But I guess he's done his civic duty and served his 2 terms of governor. Time to him to go back to scooping ice cream.
I will, and you know what, Ralph? I will never understand how people like him are wired. I just don't understand how he can just waffle and go back and forth on issues and, be such a disappointment to the conservative base. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, granted, I'm not the one who has all these, powerful people contributing to my campaign, so, I mean, maybe I just haven't felt the pressure of large amounts of money, but he's just been such a disappointment. He could have done things a lot more different. And there was a time when people were talking about him running for president, but once he started caving in on so many key decisions, from, COVID restrictions to lack of border security, nobody talks about that anymore. And nobody wanted him to run for Senate. He was initially going to be a shoo-in to challenge Mark Kelly, and that just opened the door for Mark Brnovich to run instead.
I guess so, and not just Mark Brnovich, right? Isn't one of Peter Thiel's besties also jockeying for the U.S. Senate nomination, Blake Masters?
Yes, things have taken an unfortunate turn there. I believe that Peter Thiel's millions have gotten to President Trump.
Excuse me, billions. Go on.
Sorry. Yeah, I think his money is playing a large influence, and I really hate to say it, but I think there's a good chance Trump may end up endorsing him, even though Masters has absolutely zero record. There's an article out there saying that they don't even believe he thinks there was election fraud in 2020. I believe that guy's been going around planning lies about Brnovich, as we've discussed in one of my previous articles, basically saying things that aren't true. I have absolutely no reason why anyone should support this guy. You know, in my opinion, it's all coming down to money. And I think it's sad. Now, I will say, I don't have a problem with somebody becoming elected to office because they have millions. I understand that you can't be prejudiced against people because they have money, you know? And so I'm not going to say that's wrong, but unfortunately, sometimes it does bring out the worst candidates. It just does. And I think this is a case where this is happening.
Got it. Okay, well, apparently Mr. Mark Kelly, is the pace setter for raising unbelievable sums of money in the United States for the Senate race. I think he's raised something like, I can't remember whether it's 40 million or $60 million. And it's amounts that absolutely dwarf what the combined Republicans have raised. And he's just sitting on this huge war chest, and he's the incumbent. Yes, it's going to be a red tide kind of year, but it's, you know, hard to supplant an incumbent. And if on top of the advantages of the incumbency, the glamour of having been an astronaut, he's sitting on a war chest of 40 or $60 million.
Well, let me give a contrast for our viewers. So I think Brnovich has probably raised around a couple million to that 60 million. Right. I was the social media director on J.D. Hayworth's challenge to John McCain back in 2010, right? Because a poll showed that he could possibly beat him. That's why J.D. decided to jump into the race, switch from Congress to Senate. And J.D. raised a very respectable 3 million. Well, John McCain pulled out his presidential war chest of 33 million, and that trounced JD, because all McCain had to do was just build the dang fence. He just had to play those ads nonstop around the clock all over Arizona, and everybody, all the people who were uninformed, low information voters, they all went to the polls, and that's what they voted for.
Yes. So all I'm saying is that the skirmishing for who gets the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate is it's very interesting. And as you know, you introduced me to Mark, and I was extremely impressed by his feistiness, by his intelligence, and by his conservatism. Okay, but whoever gets the privilege of running against Mark Kelly has their work cut out for them. There's national money being poured into this race because the majority of the Senate is at stake. And even if they're going to defend every incumbent till the last dog dies. And you know, Kelly has shown himself to be a very proficient fundraiser. $60 million is not, you know, is not chump change.
Well, it's twice as much as McCain had, and we thought McCain had an insane amount of money.
Right.
So I can't even fathom how much 60 million is. This is going to be one of the closest races in the country. Arizona is Grand Central again.
You'll have plenty to write about, Rachel, so fear not about that. Okay, so let's, in our remaining few minutes, let's pivot over to Ukraine. As you know, I am the co-founder of UkrainianGlory.org, which is a website set up by Bill Collier, another co-founder, a dear friend of ours, and an extremely proficient web guy. He was part of the he was part of the Youngkin team that helped on the web and social media side to push Youngkin over the top. And he is very generously been volunteering his time to create UkrainianGlory.org, which is designed to bring in thousands of recruits, Americans worldwide, a civic league to help keep America focused in on supporting the Ukrainian resistance in appropriate ways that are not looking to escalate the war or let the war move outside of Ukraine into other countries and eventually even into NATO countries. But there's a lot of things that we can do in the West that would be very beneficial and very appropriate, because the Ukrainians have captured our hearts with their valor and with their willingness to stand up to Putin's bullies.
And I gotta ask you, Ralph, did Bill come up with a name? Who came up with a name? Because that's brilliant.
Well, it was a collaborative effort. I came up with UkrainianGlory.org, and it was already taken. UkrainianGlory.com was already taken. So then Bill came up with UkrainianGlory.org and UkrainianGlory.com, which is actually even better. It's got a better cadence to it. And we filed that and we published it, and our viewers are invited to come to UkrainianGlory.org and to sign up and enlist. So as soon as we have a sufficient number of people to justify a regular bulletin from the front, we're working with Vitaly Smolin, who is a Christian leader, a minister, working closely with the Samaritan's Purse organization to provide humanitarian relief to the Ukrainians. And he's flown there to be in Ukraine, helping to provide humanitarian relief. He's right there at the front lines, along with his wife. He's stepped out to visit his daughters who've taken refuge in the United States. So he's actually back in the U.S. Briefly to catch up on his sleep and to visit his family before he goes back to the front. So Margaret Wooten, who's another Christian leader based in North Carolina, which is how I got drawn into this, because she's a board member of the Samaritan Medal Foundation, of which I'm a co-founder and a board member, based upon the most ancient Israelite Samaritan people, the fabled Good Samaritans and the lost tribes of Israel, who I discovered living quietly, half of them in Israel and half of them in Palestine on the Mountain of Blessings. And we created a medal foundation for scholarship for this 3,000-year-old people that are still live by their most ancient biblical precepts. These are the Good Samaritans that Jesus talked about in the famous parable.
Ralph, you really got to get your own book out. You've had a fascinating life.
There are 800 of them left. And their high priest is the 134th lineal descendant of Aaron, the brother of Moses. He is literally Moses's great nephew and Miriam's great nephew. And the oldest fragment of scripture is from the book of Exodus, where Miriam, the sister of Moses, sings a song of celebration when the waters of the Red Sea, which Moses had famously parted, came back together and drowned the Pharaoh's charioteers. And Miriam sang a song of celebration for the Lord annihilating the Pharaoh's charioteers, which is recorded in Exodus. But the really cool part is the Israelite Samaritans have maintained the melody, and they still sing it according to the original biblical melody. We have the lyrics, they still have the melody. I have a CD with them singing it. From going back to the actual Exodus from Egypt and the return to the Promised Land. Anyway, that's I've drifted here, but the point is that I wrote a blog. I've written several blogs for UkrainianGlory.org, and I've continued to write more of them. In this particular blog, I said, "Hey, Poland has taken in 1 million Ukrainian refugees, and Poland is only about 30 million people." Okay, President Biden just said, "Hey, we're gonna let in 100,000 Ukrainian refugees into the United States, which has 330 million people." So I said, "Look, the Ukrainians who all want to go back to Ukraine once this is over. So this is probably just a temporary measure. They're amazing people, their character, their warrior spirit, their capability taking on the Russian army, which is far bigger and far better equipped than they are, and defeating it time after time, okay, we should be welcoming them into the United States because they will improve our stock. We have plenty of room. We are, I don't know, 30 times bigger than Poland. We have plenty of room to take in 1 million Ukrainians and have it improve our culture and improve America's stock. This would be foreign aid from Ukraine to bring in 1 million Ukrainians. We should be so lucky that we bring in 1 million. Joe Biden, don't be pusillanimous here. Don't talk about letting only 100,000 in. We should be bringing in millions, but let's start with 1 million. So
and I thought that was a very compassionate attitude you took in your column, and I'm just going to hold back and reserve judgment because I believe that when you're messing with immigration, it's so complex because you have to look at, okay, let's see, how many people are we allowing in from Sudan? How many people are we allowing in from Iran? I mean, you have to measure and say how many, potentially unskilled immigrants, are we allowing in from one country but not another country, and what's fair. And so I just don't.
Hey, I hear you. I say, let's bring in a lot more Sudanese, okay? Because everything I've heard about the Sudanese who've immigrated to the United States, they have a big settlement in Minneapolis, St. Paul, I think it is. They are wonderful, hardworking citizens who are making amazing contributions to the community in every way, economically, culturally, politically, in every way, shape, and form. So I hear you, Rachel. I am totally with you. Let's bring in 1 million Sudanese as well as 1 million Ukrainians. And you know what? If we could bring in 1 million Iranians too, I'd be all for that. Have you ever met an Iranian? They are amazing.
Well, that one, as you know, gets problematic because people are worried that they're really terrorists posing as, your average Iranian Joe. So,
and you know what I have to say to that? Pasha. Okay. The Persians are some of the most civilized people in the world. Yes, of course we want to do background checks when we don't have an emergency situation like we do in Ukraine to make sure that they are people of good character. But heck, yes, let's do those background checks. And you know what? I have a lot of, if you're worried about overcrowding, which I'm not, America's got lots of wide open empty spaces. But if you're worried about overcrowding, let's trade them. A lot of my progressive friends, we will deport my progressive friends to Ukraine and to Sudan and to Iran. And we will bring in the Sudanese and the Iranians and the Ukrainians here because you know what? They are very conservative. And I'm more than willing to trade off a bunch of our progressive American citizens.
Are you gonna deport the people who founded MoveOn.org and have them do all their work in one of those countries instead now?
Well, the people who founded MoveOn.org are wonderful people. Actually, I know them personally. I wrote a whole book about them. I'm sorry?
You just said you're going to deport your progressive friends.
Well, not those progressive friends. I want to keep them because they're really good people. I mean, they're decent
people like my lefty friend Tom, that's who you would deport.
I don't know your lefty friend Tom, but if you want to offer him up to me for deportation so we can trade him for an extra Ukrainian, I'm game.
I actually like Tom, so it's okay.
Well, okay, so Tom can stay. How about Robert?
I get a lot of my best intel about the left from him, so it actually it works out really good.
Robert Reich, okay, we will deport Robert Reich.
Oh, we can agree on that.
How would that do? And in fact, I'd be willing to take 100 Ukrainians for one Robert Reich if they're willing to take him off our hands. Okay, so that was my UkrainianGlory.org blog. And by the way, if everything goes according to plan, which it never does, we will be inviting our 940,000 closest friends to sign up at the UkrainianGlory.org so we can create a move on behalf of the Ukrainian resistance. So anybody who wants a nice low serial number, go to UkrainianGlory.org now before the rush starts. Okay, but we are not going to have we're not going to have the same kind of problems that your buddy Mr. Trump's new Twitter rival.
Elon Musk?
No, not Parler. The other one.
Social.
Oh, Social Truth. Okay, Social Truth, which I signed up for. I was one of the first 100 people to sign up for them. But we're not going to have those problems. People who want to wait a couple of weeks to join UkrainianGlory.org will not find themselves locked out by the rush to sign up. So there'll be plenty of time to come in, but come in early and get yourself a nice low serial number and beat the rush. Okay, so I'm doing that, but also for my weekly column at Newsmax, I've done back-to-back columns on Ukraine. Last week's was called "A Pariah Church Inside a Pariah State," because the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church has been is engaging in heresy. He's an old KGB plant, and he's been cuddling up to Vladimir Putin and blessing his brutal invasion of Ukraine, which is just wrong, and it's causing a lot of Orthodox denomination, a lot of Catholics, and a lot of religiously serious Protestants to condemn the patriarch as having conniving at this horrible violence against the religiously serious Ukrainians. So I'm calling for more of that. I'm calling for people of faith, all faiths, Catholic, Christian, Orthodox, Jewish, Islam, all people of Orthodox faiths, to stand up and to condemn not the Russian Orthodox Church. It's a wonderful church filled with wonderful people, and I'm very taken with it. I popped off and went to the bake sale of Ukrainian Orthodox Church right here in Hudson, New York, where I've been for this past week. So great
people. Proponent of Christianity. I will give you that, Ralph.
I am. It is my daughter faith, and I'm very fond of my daughters, all of them.
That's a good. I've never heard it that way.
Catholicism and Christianity. It's like I'm a doting father. So you guys done good. I want you to keep doing good. But now the way to end this monstrosity in Ukraine, this monstrous invasion of Ukraine, is to appeal to the better angels of the Russian people's nature, so they understand that Putin has no legitimacy, moral or spiritual, and the facade. He's a fraud. He's a spiritual fraud. He's a moral fraud. Creating these massacres in Ukraine is absolutely intolerable as a spiritual matter and as a moral matter, as well as a humanitarian matter. And so in my most recent column, I just called upon Christians, Catholics, and people of all faiths to stand up and call an anathema on the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church, and to call out to the better angels of the Russian people's nature to basically say, you should be withdrawing your support from Putin to the extent you have been propagandized into believing what he is doing in Ukraine is legitimate. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. We want you to withdraw your support of Putin for this more spiritually and morally untenable invasion of Ukraine. We're not asking for regime change. We're asking for a change of heart on the part of the Russian people, and for them to restrain Putin and have him bring the troops back home. So that was my column. Those were my columns for Newsmax for the past 2 weeks, and that was my blog for UkrainianGlory.org.
And what I liked about them is how you tied in the spiritual aspect to what some of our founding fathers did. How that's how they convinced people to change their hearts and their minds, was actually appealing to that aspect.
Thomas Paine attacked the British monarchy as idolatry, and he talked about how the pagans invented the institution of monarchy, and then the Jews adopted that, and the Christians took it to scale, and they said it's basically monarchy is spiritually wrong. And he made a very strong case, and he won that case in his little pamphlet called Common Sense. And he turned the Americans, he convinced the American people to declare independence and to begin the Revolutionary War. That was done by attacking the legitimacy of the British monarchy and of monarchy in general. If we attack the legitimacy of Putin's invasion of Ukraine, that can be very powerful And we need people of faith to do that, because ultimately moral legitimacy comes from spiritual and religious legitimacy. And people like George Washington and James Madison, they were all for giving sanctuary to the persecuted. The way both George Washington and James Madison are on record of saying things that persuade me they would be 100% in favor of offering refugee status in the United States to at least 1 million Ukrainians. So I call upon President Biden to follow in the footsteps of the great presidents Washington and Madison.
And what's neat about you being the one to write about this is, as a non-Christian, you are able to, people are going to listen to you carry this message. And, you know, a lot of people, if you're not Christian, you can agree on the spiritual aspect. You know, some of my, atheist friends or ones agnostics, they at least admit that there can be, an overall spiritual compelling aspect to something. So I think you've really hit on something that I think is key. And I'm just going to pray that your article and concept goes viral.
Well, I invite you, Rachel, personally to join UkrainianGlory.org to enlist. And then I invite you to do more than pray, but to pray on your feet, to take action, to contact your congressperson, to contact your elected officials and tell them that you want America to be a staunch, not a militant ally, but a staunch ally of Ukraine. We don't want to go to war with Russia, but we do want to provide Ukrainians both humanitarian relief and the tools they need to defend themselves. And we must not waver on that. And we must, while we're at it, while we're supporting the military defense of Ukraine and the humanitarian defense of Ukraine, listen, I'm a Russophile, okay? I love the Russian people, okay? They have been victimized by propaganda into not understanding the horrible thing that Putin is doing here, okay? We need to use all of our resources to appeal to the better angels of the nature of the Russian people themselves to withdraw their support for the war on Ukraine. And we need to do it with our words, not, with our writing and with our speaking and with our contacting our members of Congress and with our going on social media. We need to get the word out. It's great to pray, but don't let it stop at prayers. Start at prayers and then take action. Become spiritual justice warriors.
Okay, I think you've coined a new acronym right there. SJW.
SJW, that's right.
So
take that, social justice warriors. We've just trumped you.
I knew you used the word Trump, even better. All right, well, I think that wraps it up for us this week, everybody. Go to UkrainianGlory.org and we will see you next week.
Thank you.